It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning into the program. It's Wednesday, July the 17th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams has produced the program. We're looking forward to speaking with you this morning on a topic of your choosing. So if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So you heard Brian Medore in the VOCM newscast break down the results of the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. I have to admit, I did tune in and watch a little bit of the All-Star Game. I was looking forward to seeing Pittsburgh Pirates ace Paul Skeens face down some of the American League top guys at the top of their order. What I think is missing in the All-Star Game, though, I wish they'd go back to letting the players wear their own team uniform as opposed to an All-Star Game uniform. I thought that was a really cool feature of that particular matchup. But anyway, what I also enjoy is some of the old-school reporters in the United States, how they cover the Major League Baseball. They refer to the National League as the senior circuit, the American League as the junior circuit. And of course, fans were thrilled to see megastar Los Angeles Dodgers Shohei Ohtani hit a 3-run shot, Soto with a 2-run double, and on it goes. But anyway, bring back the team's proper uniforms. What do you think? All right, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., 0-for-2. Only Blue Jay represented in the All-Star game. All right, so I don't know how many folks are looking forward to the Olympics, and of course the IOC is plagued with scandal over the years, and of course that really taints the athletic competition. But I am looking forward to watching some of the Olympics, especially when we're represented so well in the pool. I think the last Summer Games we had 24 medals, if I'm not mistaken. We looked like we're going to be on pace to match around that tally again this year. So when you talk about the swimming, and we've got good basketball teams going, and we got some solid track and field athletes, of course. But inside the swimming, when we talk about marathon swimming or the triathlon swimming, they're still planning on taking those events, to the Seine, to the river. If you've ever been to Paris, you know full well that the Seine is absolutely disgraceful. It's disgusting. It smells. The E. coli levels are just off the charts. They haven't had one day in the last month that made it safe for human beings to be in the Seine, to swim. And imagine they're asking Olympic athletes to do exactly that. On 8 days in August of 1900, dozens of swimmers dove into the muddy waters of the Seine in Paris to compete in the Second Olympic Games. People have not been allowed to swim in the Seine since 1923. A couple of rare exceptions have been granted, but they're asking Olympic athletes to jump in the Seine. Now, they've been trying to clean it up. You know, they had these same pipes carrying wastewater and stormwater, and of course, obviously, when they have a lot of rain, a lot of the wastewater, the sewage, makes its way into the Seine. But imagine asking Olympic athletes to swim in that river. Unbelievably gross. Anyway, you want to take it on? We can do it. Oh, speaking of the Olympics one more time for the Canadian contingent, we're sending 338 athletes to the Paris Olympics. We have 338 members of Parliament. Just a coincidence. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so the heat has been pretty something else. And, of course, it's summertime, but some of the humidity has been a problem for some. I'm personally not built for the heat. But it was on this date in 1912. The first electric air conditioner was switched on by Willis Carrier, the engineer who invented, designed, and built the machine in Buffalo, New York, 1912. And, of course, Carrier continues to be one of the big brand names in the world of air conditioning. All right. Speaking of heating and cooling our homes, so the federal government has announced and finalised what they call the Canada Green Building Strategy, talking about priorities for decarbonising buildings. Behind the oil and gas sector and transportation, buildings are the third largest emitter of CO2, so they're trying to do something about it. Now, it doesn't target natural gas and or propane heating sources, but it really primarily focuses in on oil furnaces, So, anyway, Nobody really wants to be told what they could or should do to heat or cool their home. But after the upfront costs, which can be significant when you try to get, for instance, to a heat pump, there are some provincial and federal programs. Like in this province, you can get up to $15,000 to install a heat pump in the Oil to Heat Pump Affordability Program, but that's only available in Nova Scotia, PEI, BC, and in this province. So more than 1 million homes in the country are heated with oil, a lot of them in Atlantic Canada, of course, some in Quebec, some in Ontario. But this move doesn't really come with a whole lot of detail. Now, of course, to get into a heat pump, average cost across the country is somewhere around $18,400. The real serious measure taken here is they're moving towards banning installing oil furnaces in new construction. And we do know that the numbers coming from the Canadian Mortgage Association says the country has to build 3.5 million new homes by 2030. And of course, that's not going to be hit. Even in this province, when the target is 60,000 over the course of 6 years, 10,000 per year, when a banner year is around 2,500 home starts. So, I don't know. So they're going to talk about heat pumps a lot in this country. Whether or not that'll be a program that persists after the upcoming general election, whenever that's going to be, sometime in 2025. But they are talking about banning oil furnaces in new construction in an effort to hit some of those federal government-imposed targets. What do you think? All right. All right, just keep going. Pretty good article in the Financial Post brought forward by Jack Mintz. And we'll get into the inflation rate stuff and what have you now in a second. But this is about the numbers of people working in the public sector. Okay, see if we can break it down in some coherent manner. So if you look at the data on public sector employment, so federal, provincial, and local employees hired by departments, agencies, hospitals, and schools, including universities and colleges. As of June, 4.412 million workers were public employees. That represents 21.5% of Canada's entire workforce. That's an astonishing 972,000 more, that's 28.3%, than in 2014, where 3.439 million Canadians were working for governments, and the numbers do not include any contracted services, which of course would be a lot of people employed in that sector as well. Okay, let's get a little further into it. Over the period from 2014 to 2023, the population of the country rose by 12.2%. Now, public sector employment had to grow at twice that rate. And have the services improved to that level? Of course they haven't. So even if 3/4 of public sector workers weren't unionized, private employment, including self-employment, has risen by only 12.4% since 2014. All right. Through 2014, from 2014 through last year, the non-military federal service grew from 257,138 to 357,247. That's a growth of 38.9%. That's 3 times the rate of population growth. So this is really quite something. In the budget of 2023, the federal government spent $50.8 billion on non-military wages and salaries at an average cost of $142,600 per person, which includes EI, social contribution, CPP, and otherwise. The growth of the federal bureaucracy has instead matched population growth. We would now have 69,000 fewer federal employees. That would save taxpayers $10 billion in 2023, enabling federal personal income taxes to be decreased by $1,000 for a family of 4. So when people talk about right-sizing and public sector bloat, the fact of the matter is the numbers don't lie here. The population growth since 2014, when compared to the growth of the public sector, specifically if we just look at the number of people working directly for the federal government, is remarkable. Let's look at some of the departments that have been itemized here by Mr. Mintz. Employment and Social Development Canada grew from 21,000 employees in 2014 to almost 39,000 in 2023. That's an increase of 85%. And you can't tell me that department is doing a great job when we talk about hitting timelines, for instance, because they're responsible for CPP payments, old age security payments. The Canada Revenue Agency had 59,000 employees as of last year. That's up 46.5% from 2014. Public Services and Procurement Canada now has 18,114 employees. That's up 51% from 2014. The Impact Assessment Agency of Canada has 452 people in 2023. That's double the number of people employed when they was first born in 2014. And of course, the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada has only approved very few projects since its inception in 2014. The Public Health Agency of Canada, which of course has been mired in controversy regarding pandemic measures and the two scientists who were fired here and their connections with China. All right. They employed 4,211 people in 2023. That's up 94% since 2014. I mean, these numbers are in some form, they're outrageous. Refugee and Citizenship Canada the employment doubled from 5,927 employees in 2014 to over 12,200 last year. The CRTC had a 30% growth in the number of people employed from 2014 to 2023, and on it goes. So people rightfully are wondering about when we see job number announcements and unemployment numbers, a significant number of jobs created in this country in the last decade have come in the public sector. So not just working directly for the government of Canada, but as mentioned off the top of this news story, these are federal, provincial, local employees hired by departments, agencies, hospitals, schools, universities and colleges. That represents 21.5% of Canada's entire workforce. Those numbers really are quite something. All right, I said we get to inflation, and we will. Now, I get it. No one's going to feel any relief last month compared to May. When inflation was stood at 2.9%, it has slid somewhat to 2.7%, so says Stats Canada. And, of course, the major contributors, housing, energy, and food. In the world of gasoline, the average price rose 0.4% in June. That's down from 5.6% annual increase in May. Groceries, problem. Accelerated for the second month straight to 2.1%. It had been falling mostly since January of last year, when prices grew 11.4% annually. These numbers will have a direct impact on the Bank of Canada's decision on interest rates coming up on the 24th of July. Now, if you ask 10 economists their opinion on one sole matter, you probably get 10 different opinions. But there is a pretty solid consensus why we'll see another rate cut. And of course, if you hold a variable mortgage or a short-term mortgage interest cost, you've had to renew in the recent past, you know what it's meant for your mortgage payment. So hopefully there will be some continued relief into the future. Rent rose 8.8% on average in June compared to June of last year. So that brings up forward a conversation. Like, I hear some announcements about rent control in the United States. And rent control has been tried and is in place in certain provinces here in the country. Is it time for that conversation? You know, I see some stories come from Ontario where some landlords who are trying to rent to, say, for instance, newcomers to the country and not requesting a month of security deposit and a month's rent up front, looking for 12 full months because people don't have a credit history if they're newcomers to the country. And landlords are obliging their new renters to come up with 12 months up front. So is there a place for a rent control conversation? Folks who are opposed to rent control will say that it is a discouragement for developers to want to build rental units. Now, of course, there's plenty of incentives put forward for the contractors, taking the HST off building any apartment units. But is it time for a rent control conversation? I mean, it's one thing to see such a low vacancy rate. In and around St. John's, it's less than 3%. And the rate for rent is completely unaffordable for a significant swath of the general public. But inflation, they're telling us, is dropped to 2.7%. I won't feel that when I grocery shop later, I don't imagine. All right. This is a pretty solid PR move by the FFAW. Of course, you've heard many people chime in, whether it be inshore harvesters individually or the union, regarding the commercial cod fishery decision that was taken by DFO. Still plenty of questions to be asked. In an effort to bring further momentum to their cause, and maybe for people to sign the petition, and to get the amount of public support they think they need to see politicians face the pressure to have another look at that decision. So there's some 2,000 pounds of cod that have been caught in the Sentinel fishery. The FFAW this morning, starting at 9 o'clock, and our very own Richard Duggan is down there for a feed of fish and to cover the goings-on Harbour Drive here in the city. So pretty solid PR move by the FFAW, and if you want to take it on, we can do it. All right, coming up at 1 o'clock, there's a joint press conference between Premier Fury and BC Premier David Eby. And this is about equalisation and the fairness or not, or the lack thereof, inside the equalisation formula. So David Eby has always been kind of nudging up against saying that he supports the province's court challenge of the equalisation formula. So you have to think that they're calling a joint press conference at 1. It might be to formalise that particular support from BC to our provincial government's decision to take the feds to court. And whether you think it's simply optics or it's realistic and it's a court challenge worth fighting and facing, then we can take that on as well. Pretty big news, I think, is fair to say, inside the world of provincial politics here. So, speaking of press conferences, yesterday morning at 11 a.m., PC leader Tony Wakeham took to the microphone and the cameras with Leela Evans, and the announcement was that Leela Evans was leaving the NDP to go back to the PCs. Okay, so when she was first elected in 2019 as a PC candidate, re-elected in 2021, then some 7 months later, left the PC, sat as an independent before joining the NDP. Now, she says this is not about the leadership of Jim Dinn, but it is about the leadership of Tony Wakeham. Now, there's going to be lots of commentary here that, people want to elect an official to sit in the party they ran under the banner of. Whether or not someone's going to be willing or wanting to call Miss Evans an opportunist, that's up to you. But I think, in fairness, with the NDP with only 2 seats, and I believe the high water mark for the number of seats for the NDP historically in this province has been 5. So, not to be disparaging, but I think it's pretty clear and safe to say that the NDP have no chance of forming government in the next election. But the PCs, they do. And so there always is a lot more power and opportunity to deliver for the folks of your district, in this case the Torngat Mountains. And whether or not this was the ongoing relationship between Mr. Wakeham and Miss Evans, and whether or not there was one or the other approached, say the party approached her, said, come back to our side. We're well positioned and well poised to form the next government, and there's a spot in our government for you. So I don't know how it actually all unfolded, but Leela Evans went from the Tories to Independent to the NDP and now back to the PCs, which is a pretty big development. And I think that Miss Evans is planning to join us sometime this morning. Is that right, David? Did I hear that correctly this morning? I think so. Anyway, we can tackle that when we speak with her. All right, so the evacuation order remains in Labrador City. Fingers crossed that the weather cooperates. And once again, bravo to everyone who's fighting the fire from above and on the ground. And in a special congratulations and thank you to the folks of Goose Bay. I mean, what's gone on in that community over the last month or so is extraordinary. And of course, the pressure is immense. So for the evacuees and the shock to the system when you're given some 45 minutes to leave your home, and for the folks in Goose Bay with open arms to welcome so many people from Churchill Falls and now from Lab City into their homes and their community and all the supports that have been brought forward, some of the stories are just fantastic, where people are going the extra mile to try to accommodate folks who are, pretty stressed out, having been told to leave their own home, so we can take that on. And on that front, of course, with all the resources committed to fighting the fires, of which I think there's some 13 active fires in Labrador, because of that, the province reinstated a ban on open fires. Now, yes, for some people in the summer months and maybe around vacation, and maybe you kind of checked out and kind of left the news behind for a while, apparently the reports of some 10 separate bonfires in the city of St. John's. When the fire department responded to these calls, I guess for the most part, people have been given the benefit of the doubt. They say, well, I didn't know there was a ban in place. And for many parts of the province where the risk for wildfire is really quite low, and people continually ask, well, why can I not have a fire in the backyard? It's for the reasons that I mentioned, as the province said, is that with all the resources in Labrador, to take them away from those active fires would be a problem if and when there was some mistake that led from an open fire in your backyard to a potential wildfire. Then, of course, that's the decision on that front. Let's go. All right, last one, I suppose, before we get to you. So while we hear the country's premiers congregated in Halifax to talk about a variety of things, and of course they include healthcare. Now, it's interesting when we talk about healthcare on that front, and as I said yesterday, I don't think the premiers are necessarily wrong in saying that the federal government can really do a better job, a more efficient job, and probably save money, as opposed to establishing national programs for pharmacare and dental care, to put all that money directly in the hands of the provinces, who can build upon or expand their programs that are already in place. But this one on healthcare. So the Canadian Medical Association and the Newfoundland and Labrador Medical Association, whose president is Dr. Steve Major. And Dr. Major, if you have time, we'd like to have you on the show this morning. They're talking about what is obviously a crisis in the shortage of family doctors. There's millions of Canadians that do not have access to a family doctor. Now, the collaborative care clinics, where at some point in the future there'll be some 35 of them here in this province, it still requires recruiting new healthcare professionals as opposed to simply shifting people around. One of the key areas broached by Dr. Major, and we've talked about this in the past, is there is no good reason other than territorial protection to not have a national medical license. I mean, we have the same qualifications required if you're going to practice in Vancouver or Saskatoon or in Quebec City or in St. John's or anywhere else across the country. The fact of the matter is, for highly in-demand and mobile professionals to not have a national license is ridiculous. A national license would reduce all of the pressures and time and cost and frustration of trying to apply for a locum. So please, if any provincial health minister can give me any sort of rationale as to why collectively they're not working towards a national license, and that would include the College of Physicians and Surgeons, because we don't need provincial requirements that would be different from province to province. It's one country with very similar health needs. Yes, there may indeed be different age demographics in one province to another, a different prevalence of chronic illness, what have you, but a national license just makes every bit of sense in the world, and that's something Dr. Major's talking about, and we can talk about it too. All right, last one. This is from a listener who's obviously an honest bloke. So this person found some money in Mount Pearl last week and wants to give it back to whoever lost it. So if you lost some money in the Pearl last week, and describe where you thought the money was lost and what the money was, like for instance, if it was 2 5s, $100 bill and a 50, whatever it was, if you lost some money, I know who has it. So obviously people have been worried and wondering as to why or how they can't find the money. But if that's you, you contact me. I have an email address for you, and this honest soul will return your camp to you, your money to you. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Openline follow, sir. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That means you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin this morning on the top of the board, line number 1. Good morning, Sheila Cole. You're on the air.
Hi, this is Sheila. I'm just calling as an alumni from the Tim Hortons camp, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to remind everyone that today is Camp Day at Tim Hortons, which 100% of the proceeds directly support youth such as myself from low-income communities through the Tim Camp's programming.
When were you a camper with Tim Hortons?
I was at the Tim Hortons camp in the early 2000s. I graduated from the camp in 2007, but it was definitely a highlight of my summer, being able to go and camp every year and learn amazing skills like resilience and hard work and build friendships and understand that no matter the circumstances that I had at home, I could go back out into my community and do great things.
So does that mean you attended the Tim Hortons camp for 7 consecutive years?
I did, yes.
Okay, good.
They had a youth leadership program, and I was involved in that. And
where would that camp have been?
I went to Quéant, Quebec, and then I went to 2 camps in Ontario, St. George, Ontario, and Parry Sound. And I currently live in Tattamagush, Nova Scotia, which is just up the road from the camp in Nova Scotia. I
don't want to pry into your own personal life, but you said people from, certain segments of society and maybe families that don't really have a lot of money or some problems in the family unit. Would you like to share any of your own personal story as to where you were before you were a Tim Hortons camper and where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a single-parent household. It wasn't a secret that money was scarce in our house. My mom worked shift work, and there was 4 kids, so we all had to take on responsibilities of making sure, we were fed, we got to school, we did our activities, and tried to contribute as much as we could. My dad passed away from cancer, which was just another added layer of stress and confusion, and with not a lot of support, it really caused a lot of heartache in the family, to the point at 16 I was living on my own, and all throughout this, still attending camp every summer, making sure I completed the program and being around other kids that are maybe struggling or have similar stories, and just gathering perspective on, how important it is to be humble and kind to others. And from there, I continued my education because of, the importance that the camp instilled in me on education, but also the perseverance that I learned through the camp, through doing canoe trips and portaging canoes, meeting people and finding out their strengths and working together to navigate. You do a 6-day canoe trip and just follow a map. That's all there was. And make your own food. Sometimes we lost equipment in the bottom of lakes. Sometimes we had to hike 9 kilometers just to get to the next body of water. But you learn from that there's going to be challenges and there's going to be hard days. But if you just keep going, you'll make it through. I'm continued my education and graduated from nursing with honors, and now I'm in a position to help others that are in challenging situations improve their lives and support them through that.
It's a great story, Sheila. I really appreciate you telling us that. So I guess the hypotheticals are always difficult to approach, but if it wasn't for Tim Hortons, do you think you'd be able to be making this call today, talking about your successes?
I don't believe that it would. They've given me a lot of opportunities. I've learned so much from camp. Like I said, the resilience and the perseverance that I've learned, being able to trust myself and know that if challenges come, you'll make it to the other side. And that was a huge component of camp and lifelong friendships. And they've also, in those last few years of camps, makes you understand how to get access to further education. They had a bursary program, so I was able to actually go to school without that financial burden on myself and really become the woman I am today. So it's without a doubt, I would say that it truly impacted my life. I have 2 girls of my own now, and now I get to provide a beautiful life for them that I never had.
I remember listening to the commercials, and I think they talk about some 20,000 camp experiences each and every year. And you mentioned lifelong friendships. So does that mean that, not only struck that friendship at Tim Hortons camp, but also sharing in some of their successes? Because I would imagine your story is not the exception. It's probably the rule for many of these young campers who learn some of these life skills, whether it be in teamwork and resilience and the importance of education. So talk about some of those lifelong relationships you've struck and maintained.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, we all stay connected. There's something about sharing in hardships that brings you together. But many close friends, engineers, quite a few are nurses. I think it just comes from understanding hurt yourself and providing for others. Also, in business, everyone that I've known from the camp, you stay in touch and you get to celebrate each other's successes, and that's really unique.
So I suppose this call today is an effort to give back. What else do you do in support of Tim Hortons, as opposed to simply buying a double in this type of call? Are you actually physically involved?
Myself, absolutely. I like to think of myself as a spokesperson for the camp. I'm always encouraging others, but year-round you can definitely donate to the camp. You can go out today. Today is a really big day for the camp because 100% of the proceeds from the coffee does go to the camp. But like I said, year-round you can make donations through the boxes. They now have QR codes. You can round up your order in the restaurant. But there's many things you can do, not just today, but every day to support the camp. And I'm certainly an advocate for supporting the Tim Hortons camp.
How old are your girls?
They will be 7 and 9 in August. 2 little girls, Peyton and Lauren.
Wonderful. One of my sons, his birthday is tomorrow, as a matter of fact.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Pretty great stuff. Sheila, I have to say, I've really enjoyed the conversation this morning. Would you like to talk about anything else before we say goodbye?
No, just I hope everyone finds time to head out to Tim Hortons and help support the Tim Hortons Children's Camp.
Stay in touch, Sheila. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Now, there you go. So obviously, sometimes when we hear some of these awareness and fundraising campaigns, 100% of the proceeds from the coffee Tim Hortons today go to the camp. Well, there's the personal story that really drives it home. It's one thing to hear a radio commercial or see it advertised on television or outside the Tim Hortons restaurant itself, but Sheila's story is obviously a great one. Let's go ahead and take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 2 and say good morning to the Mayor of Wabush. That's Ron Barron. Mayor Barron, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
So, of course, the Lab City is evacuated, but there's an evacuation watch in Wabush. I mean, Wabush is only about 10 minutes from Lab City. So do you get the feeling of some tense reaction from the Wabush residents? Because they're not evacuated yet, but with that close proximity to the fires of Lab City, there must be some sort of feeling of emotions in your town.
Oh, yes. I mean, there's a lot of people here, especially some of the senior people and stuff like that. They're very anxious. And at a time like this, when you see what we've seen there, 3 or 4 days ago, how bad it was, people do get anxious, and then your sister community gets evacuated, and you're on alert, so you're waiting now to go anytime yourself. But thankfully, we didn't go. But we do have some issues and stuff like that ourselves now to deal with because of that. So, people are very good here, I got to say. They've been very patient and calm, and thank God for that, because, they've been through this before, too. So I think that played out a little bit here, too.
So you say that there's some issues as a result of the evacuation of Lab City, such as?
Well, we don't have a grocery outlet, so we've got that figured out, how people are going to get groceries. Gas is an issue, so we did that. So that will be another issue moving forward, I'm sure, if this goes on any longer. Pharmacy needs, stuff like that, so we figured all that stuff out. And moving forward, hopefully we can continue to be able to allow our residents to avail of all the services that we need. Our town is operational here, and just we lack the grocery outlet, and that's something, I guess, that as a council that we will have to make sure that we address now as soon as this is over.
How did that get resolved in the short term?
Basically what we've done, because where they're on basically a lockdown now, because they declared their emergency, and no one's allowed in or out of the town. Or you're allowed out, but you're not allowed back in. So we had to make we were trying to get a corridor put to a grocery outlet who was willing to come back, and so we deemed some of their workers essential. And rather than drive their own vehicles, then we provide busing, so people will bus to the grocery outlet and get their groceries brought back again. So we did that the last couple of days, and it worked quite well. People are happy that they got some goods and the main essentials that they need.
What about healthcare? Because I know the hospital Lab City is obviously closed. What happened to the walk-in clinic in your town?
Well, we have a walk-in clinic that they did set up at our Wabash Rec Center. So they have a bunch of nurses down there who will assess you if there is an emergency. And we did have a person taken out of there with an ambulance the other day, because I guess the need was there for that. So, in emergencies, there's still people at the hospital, but the hospital is closed. They're only there just in the event that there is a major emergency with, I guess, threat of life or whatever, and that they will bring them to the facility to move them on, I guess. But right now you just get some primary care. Once you call 811 and you they set up an appointment for you, they will bring you in and assess you. Then you just can't go there. It's not set up for that. But if you have the need and you call 811, an appointment will be made, and they will make themselves available to see you.
Have there been air quality concerns in Wabash?
No. We get those daily reports every day in our meetings. I guess the first day of the fire, it probably did exceed the limits at a certain point, like for an hour or two. But other than that, it's been pretty good here.
Mayor Barrett, I appreciate making time. Is there indeed a fire crew station in Wabash right now?
The fire crew that we've always had here before all this started, we've only had 2 people. I'm not going to get into the discussion today. This is something that's going to happen after. I know you had a caller on there yesterday, Linda Watkins, former forestry officer here. A lot of the things he hit right on the head. So we'll have some discussions after this to hash all this stuff out. I think if we did act on this better at the beginning, it could have been probably handled differently. But Mother Nature being what it is, who knows how this would have went on. But those discussions are going to happen down the road, trust me.
No doubt. And last one for you, and this is a fire-related question too. So when Churchill Falls was evacuated, and then of course cut off from the regular power supply, don't have a standalone, you're pretty much isolated. Have you had any preliminary discussions, whether it be Newfoundland Labrador Hydro or the government directly, about removing this isolated tag from Wabash when it comes to power?
Yes, that's in the process. We were told that we normally have 2 planned power outages in the run of a year. so they can do maintenance and upgrades. One of the upgrades was supposed to take place this spring, where we would have been tied into that grid. So they moved that one to the fall. They figured they could have got everything done in the fall, but then we had the fire in Churchill, knocked the power out to us, so we weren't on that grid. So we talked about different scenarios that could play out here, because at one time Wabash Mines used to provide emergency power to the town with the diesel generators in there. So that's something else. If we can't connect to the grid right away, how much would it take to get that system back up and running to make sure that we do have essential power to run, just heat our homes? Thank God it happened here in the spring, not 30 below zero in the winter.
I appreciate the time, Mayor Barron. Thanks for the call.
Yeah, and I'd just like to let residents know, just continue to stay calm and be patient. We have a great crew here working on your behalf, and soon we'll be out of this. And just ask everybody to keep looking out for your neighbors. If anybody needs help, try to help them. If you can't, get a hold of us, and we try to help them too. So I hope that they just remain vigilant, and we'll be out of this soon, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. Thanks for doing this morning, Mayor Barron.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. It's, of course, Ron Barron, the Mayor of Wabash. Let's go to line number one and say good morning to the FFAW member representative for 3L. That's Miranda Butler. Good morning, Miranda. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
Great this morning. How about you?
I'm good. We're actually just cleaning up down here on the waterfront down in St. John's. We just handed out 2,000 pounds of fish in a record 35 minutes.
It's all gone.
Yep. So, unfortunate, we did have to turn some people away. We've had people lined up down here since 7:30 this morning waiting.
I'm not surprised, I suppose.
Out at 9.
Wow, 35 minutes, 2,000 pounds.
It's clear that we do have a lot of people in Newfoundland and Labrador who care about codfish, and we're gaining a lot of support, I guess, in our efforts to hold the government accountable to that 115,000 ton commitment.
Before we get into the actual decision from DFO, how many people do you think went through? Or how many people showed up, period?
Oh, boy. I would say we definitely had over 200, probably 300. I've just been in a cloud of people all morning kind of discussing the issue and why we're giving out the fish here today.
So the decision has obviously brought a lot of controversy. A lot of it was ginned up because of the redfish decision to begin with. So what's your message directly to the government? Because I don't know how optimistic the union is about a reversal of this decision, because then there's a concept of bad faith as it pertains to the offshore, what have you. So how does it impact your life?
Well, Patty, I guess all of my members are kind of wondering what actually happened. They had commitments from the federal government guaranteeing that they had the access, the inshore and the Indigenous groups, until the 115,000 ton was met. We had a lot of harvesters that were actually excited last fall in hopes that they were going to get an increase this year. They've been asking for an increase in quota for years. The government has not allowed it, so they've been held at 12,999 ton for a few years now. And we're finally hoping to get above that measure, and then they were met with a decision that invited all the other groups back in.
And it's not working out. And once again, whether it be comments come from Torrance Rogers or Minister O'Regan or others, they're all applauding the decision, but no one's been able to tell me exactly, what balance we're trying to strike and how this achieves that balance, or any real rationale behind simply just having the political announcement that, wow, a commercial fishery is back. It's just been fairly empty as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it's. I've had a lot of members actually reach out to their member of parliaments. They're not getting good responses or any responses at all. One of my fishermen actually quoted one of the MPs this morning, and he said, you can't have your cake and eat it too. He said, well, I don't want cake, I want codfish. And that's a totally different subject here. So they're very disappointed right now with their members for the most part. And they're really hoping that something can be changed and it can be put back into the rightful hands.
Miranda, appreciate making time for the show. I suppose I'm not surprised that it only took 35 minutes to dish out 2,000 pounds of cod. How that translates to, strength in numbers, public pressure to be brought to politicians where they are, I will see what becomes of it. But I really appreciate making time for the show.
thanks. I'm going to go and join the group now and in some more discussion with some of the public there.
Do you think, last one, we've been told, we saw them stage a protest at the Environment Ministers meeting, and now this PR move, which I think was a really sound decision that the union made this morning. What's next?
I think that there's a lot of discussions happening on the coming week, 2 weeks on movements. I'm not sure if there's anything that's made public as of yet, but there's lots of discussions on how we can move forward and still lobby for change.
This one comes from a listener, and I suppose is a good question. So when people lined up to get a feed of fish, they weren't able to come up and say, I want 2-piece fries, dressing, gravy. So how much fish did everybody get?
No. Yeah, so we were giving out 1 fish per person. Some people got some mega fish, like definitely probably 4 feet long, and some, got some smaller fish. But it was 1 head-on gutted codfish handed out per person.
Wonderful. Thanks, Miranda. Appreciate your time.
No problem. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Yeah, because someone had, sorry, that was a bit quick. Yeah, someone did ask me earlier that, they set up a fish fry down there, and I thought, I don't imagine that's the case. I would say they, just like Miranda said, head off, got it, here's your cod. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Pam's in the queue to talk about the wildfires. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Pam, you're on the air.
Thanks, Patty, for taking our call, just listening to some of the stuff that's been going on, the wildfires in Labrador, and certainly that, touches us all. We think about the mental health of those people. We think about the safety of those people. We think about their, I was talking to a few people who left with an overnight bag and still haven't been able to return home. And yesterday there was a Facebook group started up by Stephanie Parsons, and it's called Our Stories, Labrador West Wildfire Evacuation. And back when the first fire, I guess now my daughter was probably about 5 or 6, and my ex-husband was affected in Fort Mac with the fires, and he had to stay on the site. And I know the fear that families are feeling, fear for their loved ones and, for their jobs and for their homes and for all that kind of stuff. So, and I was also affected by Hurricane Igor. I lived out on the Burin Peninsula when that happened. And, while we escaped severe damage, insurance, what we did have was thousands and thousands of dollars worth of stuff that insurance never covered because, the act of God thing. So in that vein, a group of us got together with the Mental Health Foundation of Canada and just some amazing volunteers. And we're going to have, huge thanks to Pat over at the Rock House, because he's offering his venue for us for next Wednesday, July 24th. And we're just so blessed that Eddie Eastman is going to be in town. He's celebrating his 75th birthday this weekend out in Charlottetown at the Eddie Eastman Hall, and it's an open invite for everybody. But next weekend at the Bella Vista is his 50th. Him and his wife, Paulette, are having their 50th wedding anniversary. So he's going to be in town and has offered to perform a few songs at this event. Besides the, we could fill this venue and have it hours upon hours, but it's going to start at 9 p.m. We have Rodney Slade, Dana Reed, Tony Denny, Carla Pilgrim, and, of course, Eddie Eastman so far. So I wanted to give that a shout out. We want to fill the room, and if anybody joins that Facebook page, there's going to be some other ways that they can donate and help with everything from gift cards to shelter to other forms, because what they need right now is love, support, money, and a collective good thought from across the province and across Canada, hopefully.
Fair enough. I saw on Facebook that it was Eddie's birthday the other day, as a matter of fact. So, Pam, how do you plan on getting the support that you get at the Rock House, and whether it be at the Rock House event proper and or other donations? How do you go to get them in the hands of the people that need it?
What our plan is I've been having some conversations with the Salvation Army that are up there in Labrador on the ground. Other ways are, like I said, we're getting some gift card donations to Walmart and some other grocery stores and that type of thing, so we can get that up there through and we were talking with IOC as well. Yeah, but through the Salvation Army is what our plan is, so people who are on the ground up in Labrador can help the people who need it the most, so getting the money to them, to the people that need it.
It's fantastic. I'm glad you're putting this type of effort in. Anything else you'd like to say this morning, Pam?
No, I just think that, looking on the other side of some of the tragedies that, have affected us, whether it was fires or a lot of the areas I'm from, Harbour Mill on the Burin Peninsula, and areas like Jack's Fountain were devastated. Their homes were flooded and gone. And now when you go and drive through the community, everything is rebuilt. It's beautiful. The people are, you can't come out on the other side of this. And I know how stressful and upsetting it is, but just wanted to say that our thoughts, prayers, and our efforts, as best as we can on this side of things, are there if it needed. And a shout out to join that Facebook Our Stories Labrador West wildfire evacuation to see what's going on and to find out ways that they can help.
Terrific stuff. Thanks for the call and thanks for setting this up or organising this event.
You're welcome. Thanks, Patty.
Thanks, Pam. Bye-bye. Here we go. It's good stuff there. All right. Okay, let's keep rolling here. So back in 2022, the Special Olympic World Games were supposed to take place in Russia. They got cancelled. But thankfully, in 2023, when they were back on tap, and I believe they were in Berlin, Andrew Hines, one of the great friends of this program, he was one of the guardians of the flame, along with Lynette Wells from this province. They were over in Berlin to carry that torch proudly as a Special Olympian himself. He's a multi-sport Special Olympian. Let's go to line number one. Good morning, Andrew. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. The reason why I'm calling, yesterday I found out that 3 athletes from this province is going to represent Canada, and they're going to Team Canada's camp to compete in the Swiss World Winter Games in Italy, Rome, Italy.
That's fantastic. And so you and who else?
No, I didn't get picked. No,
oh, I see. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so I just want to give them a shout out and tell them congratulations, and they really deserve going away, and they put a lot of work into it, and I'm really happy for them.
Well, I'm sure they're pleased to hear from one of the great Special Olympians from this province, period. Andrew, do you have their names?
No, Patty, I don't, sorry.
That's okay, I'll find them. Before we move on about what's going on today with you and our others, the other 3 that of all places get to go, Rome, Italy, what an absolute experience that's going to be. Bring us back to Berlin last year, because I know you were probably really disappointed when the games were cancelled in Russia in 2022, but then thrilled to get a second shot at it and be one of the torchbearers in Berlin. Tell us about the experience.
You're giving me goosebumps even thinking about it. It was the best trip I ever had in my whole life. The people were nice. The people in Germany were nice. Really good, organized. I mean, the whole thing was organized very well. Me and Lynette went up there and we killed it, and it was a great experience. I know everyone back home was watching. I know that people were cheering for me. And, I mean, when you're an athlete, it starts with your support group. If you don't have a support group as an athlete, then you need one, because it's unreal.
Obviously it is. And just let me paint a little clearer picture just how important and what kind of recognition this was for you, Andrew. So there was only 110 participants from around the world in the torch's final leg. You're only one of 10 athletes participating, and the only one from Canada.
Yes, I represented Canada, North America, and Newfoundland and Canada.
What's going on today with your athletics?
Today I am doing soccer set up last Sunday, so we're just waiting now to see who's going to be on the team. But for now, we're just practicing and having some fun with it first until our coaches are ready to pick a team.
Outside of sports, anything on the go this summer for you, Andrew, and your family?
My mom's rowing in the St. John's Regatta. My stepfather's coxing in the regatta, so my family's really busy with the regatta, and everything else is on the go.
Have you ever rowed in one of those boats?
I tried, yes. Actually, I rowed in the dory before, and I'm kind of good at it. Kind of good. Not really good, but I'm practicing.
I'm sure you're probably pretty good at it. What I'm going to do here shortly after we say goodbye is I'm going to find those names so I can give them another specific shout out. But thanks for letting me know about it, because I wasn't aware.
You're very welcome, Patty, anytime.
Good to have you on the show, Andrew. Take good care and stay in touch.
I will. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Here we go. Andrew Hines, multi-sport Special Olympian here in the province. But just think about it. You know, the heartbreak and the disappointment associated with your going to get your hands on the torch to be on the final leg leading to the Special Olympic World Games in Russia cancelled. Then thankfully, Andrew and Lynette Wells, who was also representing the province here, not as an athlete, but they get a chance to be torchbearers to bring the torch into the Berlin Games. Absolutely brilliant stuff. And think about it. Only athlete from Canada that was part of that last stretch. So that's pretty incredible stuff. And of course, for most people, I think people would have a very special place in their heart for sports, and just specifically the Special Olympics. If you've never been to an event, do yourself a favor and do exactly that. I mean, it's one thing to see the competitive nature. If we're at King George V Park on Sunday afternoon, we see the Wanderers play Ipswich Town. You know, people enjoy competition if you're sports-minded or sports-inclined. But the Special Olympics, not only are they highly competitive, but it's that level of camaraderie that just makes it a little bit different. Outstanding individual stories, outstanding team sports participation at the Special Olympics, and of course the motto really speaks to exactly the essence of Special Olympics period. It's let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. And that's exactly what you get when you go to a Special Olympics program. A couple of quick notes before we get to the 10 o'clock news. So I don't know if it's good, bad, or indifferent, and apparently we've now found out exactly how the relationship between Barrow soccer team in the 4th Division in England, Barrow AFC, and the provincial government here, and the $171,000 over 2 years. Look, some people think it's a great idea. Maybe it will pan out to be a good idea. Maybe there'll be some meaningful return on the investment. So my question all along was not dwelling on the amount of money, not dwelling on the strategy being employed by the province here on this one, but apparently this was a so-called think outside the box idea that came from one of the summer interns, I'm pretty sure Minister Byrne told us here on the show earlier this week. I did indeed go a little further and look at Barrow's website. I was wondering what the logo would look like, because the problem is, unlike Air Emirates or something that you see on the First Division jerseys, what would it say? What would it look like? And how would it resonate with people potentially? I was worried that it might be more of a logo, but what in fact it is, it very clearly says Newfoundland Labrador on the front. So hopefully the eyeballs that see that on those particular soccer jerseys take it the next step and try to figure out a little bit more about the province and the possibility to, even just as a tourist, to visit here. Because, you know, how do we take this next step? Remember some of the confusion about not having the province represented in advertising in the playbill when Come From Away was on Broadway. And thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people went and saw it and loved it. And we probably didn't jump on that particular opportunity here to just give them another little different feeling and opportunities to travel here. Whether it be in the playbill itself, whether it be some representation out there for people handing out just brochures specifically outside the theatre about the province alone, as opposed to simply, eventually what we did was advertise in the playbill. But at the time, I believe the minister responsible for tourism was Chris Mitchellmore, and he would say they didn't feel like jumping on what was a tragic occasion on 9/11, as opposed to the massive story that is Come From Away. And it wasn't only Gander, as many communities across the province played an active role in helping those who were grounded here. So do we take this next step? And, you know, just hire a couple of summer students at Barrow. We don't need people from this province to be ferried or flown over and to represent the province and handing out brochures. And maybe that's a dumb idea. But taking it beyond simply the logo on the jersey might be helpful if we're looking for that maximum return on investment. Let's take a break for the 10 o'clock news. When we come back, there's tons of time left in the program to speak with you on a topic that's entirely up to you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the Mayor of Gander. That's Percy Farwell. Good morning, Mayor Farwell. You're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
I have to say, I was in your community last week, and it's a busy spot. I couldn't believe the amount of side-by-sides and stuff that I saw going through the community and staying at the hotel where I was staying. So, busy summer in Gander by the look of it.
It's a busy summer, and I think it's something we're becoming accustomed to, and we hope that continues. We just have to maintain some control of it, I guess, but and accommodate it as best we can. But it's busy summers. A lot of it is tourism, of course. The increase, the spike in tourism as a result of the running of the Come From Away musical here all summer long certainly is very noticeable in the community. But I mean, there's just general activity happening here. A lot of mining sector activity, and a lot of positive things happening in the community, but brings with it some challenges, of course.
No doubt. We're going to get into housing here in a second, and I just want to give a shout out to one of the places that I'd never visited in the past. I drive by the Aviation Museum, I don't know, countless times over the years, but for the first time, maybe spurred on by the fact that one of my sons is doing flight school out there, we went in. There's a great tale to be told. People just kind of take for granted the history of what would be Hattie's Camp into the Newfoundland Airport and now the Gander International Airport, but the stories told in that Aviation Museum are quite fascinating, even if we talk about the contribution to the war effort.
Absolutely. I mean, Gander's history is rather unique in the Newfoundland context, obviously, right? We have, the province was essentially founded around the coastline and based on the fishery and a lot of activity, of course, inland with the mining and forestry and so on. But Gander is kind of unique and quite global in the sense of the impact on international aviation, right? And that story is, as you said, is well told down at that museum, and I'd encourage anybody to go there. And I think a companion piece to that would be a visit to the International Lounge at the airport, and the upstairs level there has some great interpretation, more specific to the airport's history and its role in global aviation. So I'd encourage both of it for people to get a good sense of what we're all about here, right? Because as we always say, we're an airport, not an outport. We don't say that to diminish outports, because we rely heavily on the outports, and this province is based on its whole genesis is based on the outports, right? But we're a little different in the Newfoundland context, and it's something interesting for people to explore when they get here.
Just one of the stories told in the museum that I had a good chuckle at is they're talking about the cost and the time it took to ferry some of the aircraft across via the ocean versus the first 7 Hudson aircraft that were dispatched from Gander over to I think they were heading to Northern Ireland, if I'm not mistaken. But then, of course, there was one of the pilots wanted to recover his golf clubs from Prestwick in Scotland, so they figured out they could go at least that far. And there was a silver cigarette case there to tell that story, so I thought that one was a good chuckle. Okay, let's get into housing. So many municipalities have had trouble trying to come up with the data to fill out applications for the Canada Housing Accelerator Fund. You guys have secured some $4.35 million. What's the plan?
Well, it's a complex issue, so it's a complex solution, I guess, multifaceted solution. We did, our way of getting through the tangle of the application process and ensuring that we were providing a quality application and with due consideration to all the important factors. We engaged professional expertise in doing that. We're in the process of getting a housing needs assessment done professionally, and we're cost sharing that with the Newfoundland Labour Housing Corporation. And in the context of that, we've had the consultant, do work with us on our proposal through to the HAF fund. So we've been successful in an approval of $4.35 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but it takes a lot of money to resolve some of these issues. The plan we have for it is basically, the way the program works is you propose a number of initiatives and then objectives and targets in terms of housing unit development tied to that, and then you basically earn your money that you've had approved by accomplishing the objectives that you've indicated. So we basically indicated or applied for 8 initiatives really as part of our proposal, ranging from things like establishing incentive packages for developers and particularly for developers of affordable housing, because that is one key component of the capacity shortage we have here. It certainly isn't the challenge in its entirety, but it's a big part of it. So there are obviously there are costs associated with developing incentives, whether those incentives are capital grants or interest-free loans or tax abatement or waiving permit fees. These sorts of things are able to be, and the community is able to be made whole using money from this fund for some of the costs incurred in incentivizing development. And one of the key things municipalities can do, obviously, is zoning and regulatory reforms, and there's certain costs associated with those things as well. Expanding our permissions, more flexible standards, and more promotion of intensification. Development of middle and high density housing tools for developers to be able to use, identifying and implementing innovative practices in housing delivery, whether that's pre-approved housing plans or innovative design techniques and these sorts of things. Establishing a municipal land bank is a critical thing. It's hard to develop housing if you don't have land to develop it on, and we have some readily available now, and we have identified some infill opportunities which are important for certain types of housing that we need to develop. But establishing a municipal land bank would and will involve things like identifying provincial and federal lands that we may be able to acquire for housing purposes, and it's our understanding that the federal and provincial governments are open to being a part of the solution by playing ball with us in that regard. Identifying things like property utilization, different things you can do with individual pieces of property to intensify the densification of them. And of course, the one that's been controversial, nationwide, and I think is a, if I may describe it as a necessary evil, is the whole idea of the 4 units as a right town-wide or city-wide. And when that you have to be prepared to take some of those decisions and some of the controversy that comes with it, some of the objection that may come with it, if you're really going to tackle this 2024 problem. We're not in the 1980s now. We're in a period of growth. We're in a climate now where the status quo is not going to meet our needs as a growing community, and we all have to try to not really reinvent our communities, but certainly review and rejig our communities and do it with a sense of balance, so that we're not drastically changing neighborhoods and changing the quality of life people have, but recognizing that we're in a different situation now than any communities were in 20, 30, 40 years ago. So there's a lot of, and all those things, of course, have price tags attached to them, and this $4.3 million will be used towards that, and we'll earn it incrementally as we go forward. We're very pleased to have been have been a recipient of some of this money, and we intend to put it to good use. Our objective, I think, is that we have to state your objectives. For us, it's like 110 units over 3 years, with the longer range in a 10-year time frame. Those same initiatives ultimately resulting in some 750 units over 10 years. So that's the objective, and it sounds lofty, but we've got lofty needs.
And as you mentioned, so population densification and putting more residents on a single piece of available land. I mean, change is hard. People are resistant to change. But there's also a cost savings available to communities. And same thing here in the city of St. John's. Build up, not out. Because urban sprawl comes with all kinds of additional expenses for the municipalities. Water, sewer, roads, and then, of course, ice management and snow clearing and all the rest. So there is a savings down the road, even if it feels like the look and the feel and the feature of the community changes, and not egregiously. Some minor changes when you talk about fourplexes and the like. So do you think there's part of the message here, there's cost savings to your residents? Because we all look at our property taxes. It's different here in the city than maybe in other parts of the province, but I think it probably comes with some attached savings.
100%. There is, there are some positive economic, outcomes of some of these activities, and increased densification, as you say. It's more, you can more efficiently deliver services and all these sort of things. But I think in addition to the economic benefits to the community, is that if we're going to continue to grow, if businesses are going to continue to be able to attract enough employees to keep themselves open for the appropriate number of hours and so on, then we need places for people to live and stuff too. And if we're trying to attract health professionals of various types to our community and to our region, there needs to be places where they can readily find places to live as well. So there's certainly economic impacts, positive economic impacts to your tax base, and as you said, we can't be advocating for sort of egregious changes to to the structure of our neighborhoods and our communities, so that people that have been here for a lifetime don't recognize it anymore. But we have to find that balance between capitalizing on the opportunities, solving a challenge that we have currently, and do so without egregiously changing our communities. But we can't. But status quo is not going to work as we try to tackle these things. The idea of vacant land in the established part of town always being vacant land, which some people sort of believe that would be the case. Well, right across the country, one of the first steps in trying to address this issue is identifying infill opportunities because of the lower cost of development, because services are already adjacent to the properties, and because, and particularly in a place like Gander, where we have no urban transit, we don't have any public transit here in town. So if we're attracting people that perhaps have vehicles and won't have vehicles for some time and are working in areas where they need to get to work every day, you can't be just building places for them on the outer perimeters of the new developments, because it's not practical. So there's a lot of different moving parts in this, and it will cause some concern to some people. And I have to say, for the most part, people are understanding of the challenges we face. I don't think we have too many deniers out there that don't think we have challenges. But we, as will always be the case in every community, we do have many people that believe that there needs to be solutions, just not in their neighborhoods, and that's going to be a challenge for municipal elected officials right across the country, and we have to be prepared to be reasonable and fair and to find that balance, right?
And you have to find a balance inside the world of affordability, which for me is as complicated as anything attached to housing. It's one thing to get contractors and what have you, but affordability, the benchmark is about 30% of my income afforded to housing, whether it be rent and or my mortgage payment. But of course, I earn a different amount than you earn, than Dave earns, and other listeners will earn. So how do you approach that affordability conversation? Because what might be affordable to me might not be to my neighbor. So what's the strategy?
Well, that's right. I mean, what's affordable to you and I might be two different things, and yet there's sort of an accepted formula that I think for Gander that works out right currently to about $1,600 for on the average income and so on, $1,600 per unit, and for many people that's not considered affordable. For a young working single parent or something, that's probably not affordable, even though it fits into that's what the formula tells us. But I mean, there's ways that as a municipality, I guess how we would try to support the affordability of housing is by using some of the types of incentive, or types of initiatives I'm talking about to reduce those building costs and combat some of those things that we know that the cost of building has gone through the roof these days, and that doesn't help when you're hoping to have affordable rents at the end of someone building a unit that they have to charge a significant amount in order to just pay the debt on it. So things like we can do to relieve some of those costs, like making services available more cheaply, waiving permit fees, identifying, perhaps doing some layer of development on land prior to the developer coming to take it over. That helps relieve some of the cost burden on the developer and so on. So there's a number of things we can do in that regard, but it is a challenging environment because the building costs are pretty high these days, and interest rates are pretty high these days, and none of those things are conducive to making affordable residences available. We're encouraging developers, for example, in some cases where we own land, asking developers to come and develop smaller lots, which can then theoretically and practically be able to be offered at lower prices. If you have more service lots with the same infrastructure servicing them, then obviously you should be able to offer them for lower rates and keep the prices down that way. So it's a lot of there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of discussion required and cooperation and collaboration required between municipalities and the provincial and federal government and developers, in trying to. We don't expect developers to come and build, or rent properties at a loss or sell properties at a loss. We have to try to find, use whatever creativity we have to keep those costs affordable, because we have to recognize that Gander's a relatively prosperous community, and we have a lot of high-income earners here, but we also have a very large hospitality sector for our meetings and special events and these sorts of conventions and all this kind of stuff. And the people that work in that industry typically don't make the high incomes that some of the other professions here in town do, but they also need places to live, and the people that operate those facilities that keep that part of our engine running, they need to attract employees, and they can't attract employees if employees can't find anywhere affordable to live here. So it's up to all of us really to have a community where nobody's excluded for any reason, right? And challenging, but I guess that's why us volunteer counselors are paid the big bucks.
Exactly right. Housing requires a nationwide mind shift too. It used to be all about a place to live, a safe, healthy environment to raise your family, and now we talk about housing as the biggest piece of equity I'll ever own, and/or a significant contributor to GDP. So there is that might be splitting hair, but I do think it really speaks to how Canadians view housing and housing needs or housing shortages. I appreciate your time this morning, Mayor Farwell. Anything else, sir?
No, that's good for me now, Paddy. I think I've taken enough of your time.
I appreciate yours. Thank you.
Pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye. It's Percy Farwell. Mayor Gander, let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Clyde, you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Paddy. How are you?
Doing okay. How you doing?
Well, not bad, but I'm surviving anyway, like us all, I guess, one day at a time in this fast-moving world today, hey, but everything is a bit different what it used to be back in the day, I guess. We all got things to do, and seems like there's never enough time, but apparently that work service and that don't have much time either for trying to fix bad spots in the roads in Newfoundland as a whole, you know what I mean, our communities, and I've called you many times on the roads and that, but I think there needs to be a plan made, Paddy, at least to come and, get contractors that can come and put in new culverts or pipes and just fix the real bad spots. You know what I mean? I mean, it's ridiculous what you got to drive over in all these nice communities to come to. I'd say a lot of people turns back and goes the other way when they comes out over that road we got here now in the Ormond Peninsula from the branch to Rock Harbour is 6 kilometers, and Spanish Rim is in the middle of that too. So there's houses pretty well the whole ways out here, right? There's only a small place, but I know the minister was on the other day, John Abbott there, and he was talking about they're going to put the divided highway right from Whitburn right to Sunnyside now, which is good, but that pertains with the federal government too, right? Trans-Canada Highway, right?
Well, people send me pictures of highways where they live all the time, and I can safely say, I don't know what the total kilometers of roads here are on the island, somewhere in the neighborhood of 14,000 or something like that, and there's always going to be patches of roads that are in poor condition, but some of the pictures I see, I mean, they're impassable. I don't know how people get away with driving on them, some of the roads that people send me pictures of.
Well, I had to buy 2 new rims for the car. It was twisted and that from going over the road out here. So, that's $200 gone there. And like I said, I'm just trying to say, I don't have to be criticizing because that never gets us nowhere anyway, right? Only creates bad stuff. What I'm saying is the government should come up with a better plan for just go around, at least have some kind of, the contractors there can do this work. You just dig it up, put in a pipe, and just pave that small section over. At least then you got that little bit done. I know you'll probably never get it all paved, but, just do the real bad spots. Like you said, it's not fit to drive over. I mean, it's ridiculous. The pipes are going down. You're going down the hole. They're not there no more, So the only way to solve that is dig it up and put new ones in, just do that over, like small sections. I know the Department of Transportation, they don't do no paving, but they're supposed to be doing ditching stuff, and that's what pertains to the culverts given. Like there's not proper ditching either, and what they do, Paddy, up this way is they close down the depot. There's one down there over the road, we call it, down the boat harbour, right? That's closed down in the summertime, and they cut back on their staff, and they work from Monday till Thursday, 10 hours a day, 40 hours a week. So where did that give you time to do any ditching and maintain the roads, right?
Fair enough. The roads are never going to be perfect, but we really do have to ask some questions about why the roads, say for instance, through Terra Nova National Park, are different from on either side. And then, I've travelled around enough to know that it really does feel like we don't get enough value for money spent on the roads. So whether it be the tenders, how they look for the bed preparation and the chemical composition of the asphalt and the thickness of the asphalt, all the rest of it, and how quickly vehicles are allowed to get on the asphalt once fresh pavement is laid, there's got to be some reason why. And I say this one all the time, is there was a number of years ago, I went to a budget lock-in over at the Confederation Building, and the government, and was the Liberals at the time, they were newly elected, they were talking about getting more pavement, more kilometres of pavement for money spent, when in fact that's not really the solution here, because you get what you pay for. If the roads aren't lasting, we end up over the course of 20 years spending more on a single kilometre than we could have possibly with maybe more expensive and fewer kilometres done, but you get more out of it. So there's got to be a way to figure this out. I spoke to a civil engineer at Memorial University. Actually, he's one of the professors. He says we don't have a modern approach to paving. I should get that guy back on, Dave. He was really quite helpful in understanding the pavement issue. Anything else you want to talk about this morning, Clyde?
Yeah, like you say, Paddy, it's no good of a slap job. You got to do it right the first time. Anything. Sometimes we do things and we do it a bit cheaper our own self. And in the long run, the same thing. You're going to end up paying more for it in the end. You got to put a bottom to the roads. That's why you're like they are. It was just slapped down over the bags, and that's just the way it is now. But back a few years ago, they said they were going to do a test on 3 or 4 different kinds of pavement, see which would last longer. I never heard nothing about that since. Paddy, but like I said, just putting that out there, and the only thing I can say now, regards to the codfish, I got to touch on that because I worked in the fishery 22 years until we went through the moratorium and all this stuff, and like I say, it don't seem like we still got a clue how to handle it. We always got to be fighting with Ottawa or fighting with somebody. Like there's no such thing as having a plain field there. I mean, the fish is out there, the waters are there, and we know what's there pretty much. But still, you just can't get through to people up in Ottawa and stuff. I mean, for years and years we've been at this, and it's still the same old thing 30 years later.
Fair enough, Clyde. I appreciate the time. Thanks for the call. Yeah,
like I say, good luck to everybody out there, and be safe, Paddy, and try to do something good for somebody today. You'll feel better, and life will go on, hopefully, and we'll all do good together.
Let's hope so, Clyde. Take it easy.
All right, bye.
Take care, bye-bye. And just as a reminder, with the expansion of the divided highway, if this conversation took place 8, 9, 10 years ago, and we were talking about the public-private partnerships, there would be a lot more focus on that alone. Because it's fine to talk about requests for proposals going out the door this year for construction to begin in 2025. So it's going to be a nightmare to try to travel, but road work needs to get done. So the plan is, over the course of a 30-year agreement with some sort of private developer, 40-kilometre section of Twin Highway from Whitburn to around Bellevue, and then a 15-kilometre stretch from Grand Falls, Windsor into Bishop's Falls. And of course, they call it the P3, but they basically have a different acronym associated with this particular play. And what is it? Design, build, finance, operate, maintain. So some of the concerns will come with not only some short-term savings, but maybe long-term problems. P3s are not all created equal, but there's plenty of examples out there where it has not worked. When we talk about the 30-year window, for instance. So then you talk about what are national standards for snow clearing or ice management. NAPE has concerns with who's going to be doing this type of work as opposed to their rank and file members. But ultimately, for the people of the province, if the Twin Highway makes it more safe, which of course it does in concept anyway, if people are behaving in some sort of appropriate manner behind the wheel. But that whole business about the P3, the government says they're building this particular proposal on what they call the success of long-term care homes being built, Grand Falls, Windsor, Gander, St. John's, Corner Brook, and of course the Corner Brook Hospital, the penitentiary, whenever that comes to pass. So it becomes the go-to. And again, a decade ago, there would have been a pretty big conversation surrounding the P3s and the use of P3s, but now it's the go-to for public infrastructure by the look of it. Let's take a break. When we come back, there we go. We mentioned the fact that pretty big news politically speaking here in the province yesterday when Leila Evans decided to leave the NDP to rejoin the PCs. And of course, it's about leadership. She says it's about Tony Wakeham's leadership and their long-running friendship, not about the leadership or any shortcomings of Jim Dinn. We'll get a better understanding of Miss Evans' decision right after this. She joins us on line number 2. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 2 and say good morning to the PC member representing the folks in Torngat Mountains. That's Leila Evans. Good morning, Leila. You're on the air.
Thank you, Patty.
Welcome to the show.
Yes, glad to get an opportunity to be on your show again as a PC member.
Yeah, now, I don't think anyone can be all too surprised given the fact you actually ran as a PC initially in 2019, re-elected as a PC in 2021. So before we get this decision to leave the NDP to go back to the PCs, remind the folks why you left the PCs in the first place.
Well, back in the day, there was a lot of change in leadership there. We were just had lost his seat, and it was. I guess there was some developments there. For me, there was some issues. Now, myself and Tony Wakeham, even before he became the leader, we talked about those, and I talked about it to the rest of the members of the PC party individually, and they understood why I left. But I think the most positive thing for me has been just seeing the direction the PCs have taken in the last 2 years. Like one of the things that I said, and I'll repeat again, is we've both grown. I've grown as a member. I've grown as an advocate. I've learned a lot. When you come into political life, a lot of times you think you know how things work, and you think you have a good understanding of the political scene, especially if you consider watching the news and being active in your community. But at the end of the day, until you really get in there, it's a difficult situation for you to really understand how different it is. And there's a saying, actually, that was said to me, and I laughed at it first, but somebody, who was retired from politics said to me, Leila, it takes about 2 years for you to find out where the bathrooms are. And that's the exaggeration. But after you've been in politics, I've been here now for 5 years. You kind of laugh at. There's a lot of truth in that, and you learn a lot. And I've learned a lot. And the biggest problem for me, what I see is the only problem for me when I was leaving, when I was going back to join the PCs, is I would have to leave the NDP. And I like with Jim Dinn, I had a good relationship. I don't think there's many people in this province who's worked or spent time with Jim Dinn would actually say that they have a problem with anything that he does. He speaks with passion. We're closely aligned with that. But at the end of the day, Patty, my district has been neglected for so long. As a MHA, my days are long. My days are long in not only in advocating for services and supports, but the dealing with the day-to-day issues that my constituents face. Unfortunately I'm involved with that. So for me, is I had to look after myself in terms of my personal health and in terms of my personal satisfaction. Being an MHA, only people really close to me know what I've sacrificed personally to be an MHA and to continue to be an MHA. And so that's really what it came down to.
But how do any of those pressures change by being a member of a different party?
Well, I like I said, looking at Tony has made the big difference for me in terms of the PC party. The party has turned around. And he's lived and worked in Labrador, and also he's been a major supporter of me from the very beginning. So for me, is I've got to look at myself in terms of my ability to continue day in and day out to work hard, and where am I getting the energy from? And also, too, is at the end of the day, I got to make some progress. And I think under Tony's leadership, if they can form government, if they can defeat the Liberals, I think we'll see some positive change. Like, a lot of people are really starting to become disillusioned with this new premier, and the Liberals been in for 9 years. And really, we only start to see some action when we're hit with a huge crisis. And then you got to say, where were you and your departments while this was unfolding, while this was building? Like the health crisis, yes, this happening all over Canada. But the crisis in Newfoundland and Labrador is unique. And then when we look at the travel nurses and we look at the healthcare, we look at the cost of food. Like, all of these things really, I think, has been allowed to fester to a point of becoming a crisis.
So what if someone says, well, Leila Evans only left the NDP because she has a thirst for power. The Tories have a chance to form government where the NDP have none. So whether it be life pressures and busy schedule and those types of things, which are very real. I know politicians are busier than people give them credit for. But someone says to you, okay, this is just a thirst for power. What do you say?
Well, if I was... I don't think anyone could say I got a thirst for power, because I certainly wouldn't have left the PC party, because the PC party was a larger party at the time. And like, for me, is I mean, I'll say it here on Openline. When I first became elected in the first couple of years, I was recruited by the Liberal Party. I could have went over. I could have sat in government. I was offered a cabinet position. Now, I tell you something, Patty. People are not supposed to say that out loud. People are not supposed to talk about that. That's supposed to be all hush hush. But people are starting to learn. With me, I am not keeping things secret that the general population needs to know about. And I've said that openly. So if I was thirsty for power, I'd be sitting over with the Liberals now, a part of the problem. And I was very, very fortunate. At the very beginning, I started to see really what was at play and how government works, how politics works. And I didn't want to be a part of that Liberal government. I didn't want to be a part of a government that was more focused on the appearance of doing something to solve problems than actually solving the problems.
Did Tony Wakefield? Sorry,
I don't make decisions quickly, right? Like I says, I give it good time, and so for me, like, yes, I've talked a lot to Tony. I've talked a lot to people in the PC party about some of the solutions that will be needed for government. One of the things that you need is you need to be able to tell the people the truth. And a lot of times, when decisions are made, a lot of times it really is to benefit people that or organizations that has very little to do with the general population. And I think people will speak up. I think people are starting to speak up and starting to try to hold government to account. But at the end of the day, Patty, I got to help my district. I really got to help my district in terms of resources and infrastructure and services. And so for me, is like I said, I got an opportunity to work with Tony Wakeham. I got an opportunity to talk to people about Tony Wakeham. And like I see it unfolding, where Liberals are trying to villainize the PC party. They're trying to do it to Tony Wakeham. And at the end of the day, I know what they're saying is not true.
So, did Tony Wakeham offer you anything into the future? Like, for instance, the PCs are carrying themselves as if they're very confident they have a real shot to form the next government. So did he say, Leila, come on over, and if we win, right into the cabinet you go? Anything like that?
No, he did not say that. And I can honestly say he didn't offer me a cabinet post. He didn't offer me Labrador Affairs, Indigenous Affairs, or Environment, or anything like that. And for us, our relationship is not about that. He respects who I am as a politician. He expects my ability to communicate. He expects my ability to be respectful of others. And that's what's important for me.
Okay, so did you approach Tony and say, I want to come home to the PCs, or has Mr. Wakeham and other members of the PC party been actively trying to recruit you to come back?
Well, in actual fact, before Tony even got elected as leader, that's one of the things he said. I'm running for leadership, and he said, like, I wish you were part of my team. I wish you hadn't left. I already said that to you many, many times, Leila. And I said, Tony, I got a good relationship with you, and I was so grateful that he still supported me after I left as a person, and because he could have turned his back on me, he could have shut me out, but really he was still an advocate for my district. He was still an advocate for the things that I was speaking up, and he did go his way to try and help me with that. And for that, I got to tell you, Patty, having that kind of a relationship with people at the political level is invaluable.
Of course. Relationships are important all the way through, but I guess for this specific decision, were you recruited actively by the Tories, or how did this decision start? Because you said that you take your time in making these decisions, but I guess the basic question is, did you approach them or they approach you?
Well, I never saw, for me, I never saw my ability to leave the NDP and go back with the Tories. Because for me, I was settled into the NDP. I was working at being a good NDPer and representing the party. I keep working on that. And when I used to talk to any member of the PCs, because we are friends. For me, it was always, well, if I ever did try to go back with them to be a part of their team, to me it would be the burden. From the political outcry and a lot of the haters out there would probably bury me and take away any credibility I had to help my district. That was the greatest burden, and I'll say that. Now, some people may be cringing who care and love me to say, God, Leila, don't be saying that. But that's the truth. If I ever entertained the idea earlier on in my careers in part of the NDP caucus, that was always something that came up, because I know the political game, I know the hate mongers, I know the political spin. The 8th floor over there in the Premier's or the Premier's offices, there's just as many comms people as there are people who are working in government. I mean, it's just ridiculous how much effort is spent on the messaging.
Yeah,
so for me, I knew I'd be vilified.
I think you'll find that in governments of every stripe. Last one, and this is an ideological question, but I think it's important. On the federal level, there's probably pretty distinct ideological differences between the parties. Provincially, between the Liberals and the Tories, really not a whole lot of the ideology issue. But sitting with the NDP, I think they're the outlier. You can quite clearly have a different political leaning and political ideology than the Conservatives in particular. So how do you square that circle? The NDP back to the PCs when there is absolutely a distinct different approach to politics between the two parties.
Well, the first thing I'll say to your question there is, Jim Dinn is, I said it many times, he's a great person, and he's a good leader for the NDP. And the problem with me leaving, like the problem that I see it, was that I was going to impact Jim, and the haters out there would use this to vilify Jim. Oh, look, she left it. He couldn't keep her in the party. That's something that the Liberals will probably be saying to sort of marginalize Jim Dinn and the NDP, and they'll be using the same thing to marginalize me and my district and all the issues I raised on my district. But at the end of the day, this decision was what was in my heart and really what I needed. What I needed to do. And I'm going over there. I'm not going over there with a promise of a cabinet position. And for all the hate mongers out there and the people who just like to be negative and just claw people down, for me, as I'm not power hungry. If I was power hungry, I would have took the offer back when the Liberals had a minority government and they were trying to recruit MHAs. And as young and as naive as I was to politics, I had enough sense to stay where I was, to not join them. And I mean, to me, like, this is an evolution. And I got to say, I mean, it's not just Tony Wakeham over there. I mean, there's really good, honest people that I've stayed friends with and that are my colleagues in the House of Assembly. Craig Pardy is such a decent man. And something, when it come time for my petitions in the House of Assembly and we're all there competing and I'm over with third party, he stepped up ample times when I was trying to present my positions on healthcare. Cancer patients being bumped off the flights and can't get out to their treatments or can't get home to heal and to recover because they got to go back again in another 2 weeks. So for me, like, having people like that who show their true colors, to me is I'm not worried. I'm not worried about going over and joining that.
Okay, and that's a fair answer.
I
do have to get going though. What I will say to wrap up, Leela, is that I hope you realize that I'm only asking questions to get information, not to gin up the hate mongers out there, because they frustrate me as much as anybody on the planet. So I appreciate your making time for the program this morning, and I'm glad we had a chance to have a chat.
No, and like I said, Patty, I know you're doing your job, and for me, and if I do feel a little bit defensive, is because to me, I don't want to also undermine my ability to try and get things done. And the only way the government, the Liberal government, will do things if it's out there in the public and the public demands it. They're not going to do it because they know that there's a lot of social issues, health issues, food issues in my district. They'll never help my district unless the general public steps up and says, something. This is the right thing to do. So I'm trying to hold on to my credibility, but I'm trying to move forward as well for my own self, for my own personal wellness.
Understood.
For my own mental health. So thank you, Patty.
Appreciate your time. Thanks, Leela.
Thank you.
There you go. It's Leela Evans, the PC member for Torringate Mountains. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Well, it went a little past my scheduled break time with Leela Evans, but, inside those conversations, there's a lot to glean. And of course, it's just the unfortunate reality now that when you have any politician of any stripe makes any type of move, of course it'll bring upon some emotional reaction, some of which might be quite harsh, some might be over the top, but we all have to ask the questions. And you heard me mention to Miss Evans that, look, I ask the questions because I think I have to. I mean, if people listen to the program thought that I'm never going to ask a question, appointed one to any politician representing any party, which we try to do. We don't play any favourites here, as far as I can tell. People accuse me of that all the time, but someday I'm a conservative, someday I'm a liberal, someday I'm a socialist, someday I'm a communist. So apparently all of those flow in, and it seems to me that we're probably on a reasonable track there. And of course, I also have to thank some of the listeners, because sometimes, maybe some of the best questions that get asked on the show are planted by a listener in my mind. So that's the ongoing contribution that the listeners make, because that's absolutely a key feature of the program. Whether it be I see an email out of the corner of my eye or something on social media, so that's actually part of it as well. Sometimes we have the luxury of knowing when someone's coming on, and we can throw it out there. Like David Diamond is coming on. If you have any NL Health Services related questions, or the Prime Minister, or Mr. Poilievre, or the Premier, or whoever, because that really does go a long way to helping me try to formulate these conversations and those interviews, because I don't really, I guess it's probably not how the best do it in the business, but I don't really write stuff down necessarily, as opposed to ask and just listen to the response to take us to the next area of concern or the next potential question. So anyway, big thanks to the listeners. We're on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Openline. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, Robin's in the queue to talk about homelessness. And we know that part of the evacuation, whether it be out of Churchill Falls and or Labrador City, it's not just people and their belongings, it's also people and their pets. I heard one story this morning about a family and their dog and their 20 or so 1-month-old chickens tried to make their way into a goose space. So we'll have those conversations on whatever you want to talk about right after this. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Robin, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
I just wanted to I think it's time to maybe just give an update on the homelessness, especially the people who have been refusing the shelters situation. And I'm doing so this morning because of the investigation that is happening down on Water Street West. And it's because for those of us who continue to support individuals who are living rough, it was a tough morning because we didn't know who it was, and we know many of the people that we support are struggling immensely right now because of the length of time they've been in this situation, because of the harms that are caused to them, being forced out of every outdoor area they try to find shelter in.
But just one second, Robin. So are you saying that you know who this person is involved in this?
I don't. So I can confirm that I don't know, because we've checked in with all the people that we directly know. But the community is scared now because, so many of them are living rough, sleeping under bridges, sleeping, there's some that are sleeping in that area. So that was why a few of us who are doing this outreach work had concerns. So anyway, we've managed to be able to confirm that the ones that we support are okay. But there's a lot of fear in the community right now for the people who are living rough and what this means to them. Of course, with any time there's a death of one of their community, and that happens more often than you know. It's just not reported.
But just once again, how do we know that this was a homeless person? I mean, it could be. I have no earthly idea. It could be someone that's comfortably housed that was murdered, for all I know.
It could be. I guess because we know so many people who stay in that area, we can't. It's hard to imagine that somebody who's not homeless would be there because there are people sleeping there every night sometimes. I mean, they move around, but these are locations that are familiar to a dozen or more people who have chosen to stay within the downtown core instead of, going out to the periphery. You can't put a tent up anywhere anymore without, within minutes, you've got the police showing up and forcing you to take it down. So that causes a lot of migration, and it's made it very difficult for people who are trying to continue to support these individuals to keep tabs on them, to know where to find them when situations happen, and as well to provide support to them, because any way that we can support them with mental health or addictions or whatever, it's through the system, and I use that word in quotations. And at this point, anyone who's been within this homelessness system for any longer than 6 or 8 months, they don't trust services. And so all of this goes back to, in the last couple of weeks, I have been reading ATIP reports, thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of ATIPs about that involve the shelter inspection. I have copies of the shelter inspections over the last 3 years. I have copies of the communications between the Coordinated Access Table and government, CSSD, Department of Housing, and the Org Code, which is the organization that developed the shelter standards. So through that, I've been able to get a pretty good idea, as well as the communications around the tent encampment and how all that went down. So through all of that and the 10,000 pages, some of which are redacted, it's painted quite a clear picture that the response has been more about protecting image and responding to media than it has been about trying to really sit down and figure out solutions, short and long-term, medium, that work for a variety of people who are experiencing homelessness. Because at this point, we have so many seniors. We have so many youth. I mean, the needs are extremely diverse, and the system that is being offered is a very inefficient, system that is causing harm to not only the people that are working in it, that are living it, and the clients, if you want to call them that, but also the people who are working there at these organizations. And so there are many right now that are on stress leave. Many of the ones that are really good that have been able to kind of keep things going and keep that respect and ownership and eye and care and compassion and concern for the guests. Through the ATIPs, I'm able to see what happens when someone calls the shelter line and they write a report on the issue, like if they aren't able to, if they deny housing and why, or if they deny shelter or why. And basically, it's very sad to see some of these stories, and I will be sharing them soon. But to see some of these stories, there was one situation where there was a young girl who had been staying at one of the nonprofit regular shelters. She had her own private room, but she didn't feel safe there. And so she went to stay at Tent City. And then something happened at Tent City. And so she decided to call the shelter. She was in the car with her mother and called the shelter line with her mother in the car. And basically said, like the shelter line said, well, you have one choice. You can go back to this one place or, that's it. That's all we can offer you. And the mother was trying to reason and say, perhaps you can think about this. And that was it. Nope. This is your option and that's it. And the majority of these interactions on the phone line, there's no care or compassion. And there's even judgment. Like in the note about that phone call, it said, overheard girl talking to her mother who said, going to take mattress to a friend's house, so doesn't need a place to stay for tonight. There's no follow-up if someone is calling in crisis. And so it's basically just a very rudimental administrative process that has no room and hasn't had any room. It has not expanded since 2021. There are no new offerings except for the Comfort Inn, which continues to only house, maybe 20 people at the most. And they're being very picky and choosy about who gets to go there. And so I have major concerns that with the shelter standards that were the draft report that came out last week, there's no oversight. There's no requirement. The word should is there. I took our shelter standards and I compared it to the City of Ottawa shelter standards because that is what I would consider as best practice. And there was a lot, when you looked, I searched terms, okay? And so I searched the term should and I searched the term must. And in the Ottawa example, everything is must. The shelter operator must. The shelter operator must provide. Within hours, it says the shelter operator should. Not only that, back in April when Newfoundland and Labrador Housing was communicating with the coordinated access table and the various shelters about the shelter standards, they sent a draft report to them in April. I couldn't see that report, but I could see the communication that went back. And there were communications there from some of the bigger nonprofit shelters saying, this is okay, but we're going to need more money to be able to implement this. And so that was back in April. Well, then it took until now to get them back. So we don't know if it was decided that money would be given to implement these new shelter standards, or if they reframed the standards so that they wouldn't have to increase funding. But with all the fires that are happening, the natural disasters, and people are becoming more and more homeless. Like more and more people are becoming homeless every day, and we still do not have new houses being built. Yes, they're doing the construction on Pleasantville, but there's not enough to be able to stand the pressure that we are experiencing right now.
A couple of quick things before I do have to go. Is the emergency standards report, I guess it's initial drafting, you're right, there's a long way between shall, maybe, could, should, would, or must. So that's an important point. But also, what jumped off the page to me initially was, how are these very fundamental standards not already in place? And probably the most disappointing thing is that we don't have any sort of strategy to even move away for the for-profit landlord to be involved in mercy shelter business. Because obviously, like Dan Mead said, and I think this is pretty intuitive, he said we wouldn't have to worry about enforcement if we didn't have the for-profit landlord in place in the first place. So what I think is a pretty nice catch-all statement coming from Dan. So again, those two things, or I guess three things, shall versus must, and how come this is not already in place, and what's the strategy to move away from this structure?
I will just say in terms of the private operators that there is zero slowing down of the private operators taking on more of these opportunities. There is an operator that has made millions and millions of dollars since 2021 and providing these emergency shelter opportunities. He's just purchased more buildings. He's renovating them the same. And if you look, like I have, again, the inspection reports from the last 3 years, they don't have the name of the operator on the inspection reports, but because I know the system so well, they have like the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms, and the number of floors. I can tell what shelters they are because I know all the shelters. I know how many bathrooms they have. I know how many, right? So I'm able to go through. And so this one operator who is now in the process of building, I think he's got 2 projects on the go with at least a dozen new shelter beds. So his shelters have been getting very poor responses on his checklist, and the checklist is only looking at like how many fire extinguishers do you have? Do you feed people? Like the food thing on these inspections, like at the same time government was shutting down the tent encampment and telling everyone that the food was not an issue because I think one of the people had sent around pictures of Cheerios and something and said this is what they get for breakfast. Right.
Did someone strike the wrong button there, Dave? Wasn't me, and didn't mean to cut Robin off, but we'll take this opportunity to get to the break. And Dave, give her a call back and offer our apologies for inadvertently hitting some sort of button. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to be speaking with the Mayor of Lab City and also Kelly Pefford with Pefford? Is it Pefford, David? I want to make sure I pronounce names properly if I can. Kelly Pefford with the Faith Haven Animal Shelter in Wabush. Because as we mentioned, people being evacuated, it's not just themselves as human beings and their baggage, it's also their animals. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. As mentioned, inadvertently we were cut off speaking with Robin, so we'll get our final thoughts from Robin on line number 2. Robin, you're back on the air.
Thanks, Patty. Listen, I tell people to cut me off all the time because I could just keep going forever about this stuff. All that to say, like I know the Auditor General has it on her list of things to look at, but she also has a lot of other things on her list as well. And there's nothing being done to make me or anyone working in the system, including those working for the not-for-profits. There's a big difference between the leadership who attends the meetings at this coordinated access table and the people who are on the front lines working in this. The people who are at the leadership table, at the coordinated access table, very rarely get to talk to the people that we talk to. They don't go in the shelters. They don't understand what is actually happening out there. And there's no journalism that are looking into this. And so I have a real fear about journalism, and actually in this province, but I want to say that I'm actually loving what Tim is doing in the afternoon. That 4 o'clock show is wonderful. And VOCM has become my go-to for news sources now. So because there is so much lacking across the board in the other media. And we need more investigative journalism to be looking at things like this and uncovering, because the information I get because I spend hours looking for it.
Well, I can't speak for anyone but myself, but we put in a pretty good effort, I think, to try to get to the bottom of some of these issues and cover them as much as possible. And I mean, I've even tried to have to go down this road because housing and homelessness might indeed be talking about morality and social responsibility and what have you. But even for folks who are worried about dollars and cents, I've even gone to talk about the study that came from the University Hospital in Toronto. If you're worried about money, housing people is actually cheaper. Because if we talk about the 2 most expensive things in this country, A night in prison or a night in hospital, the report is clear. Looking at 1,000 admissions, housed versus homeless. Homeless are twice as likely to be in there for double the amount of time and consequently double the cost. So if we can try to deal with the complex medical needs that come from being homeless, then we're talking about the economics as opposed to simply leaning on morality and social responsibility. Final thoughts before I have to go. Pardon me?
The Health Accord says, and even the government in their wellness, well-being marketing campaign that they're doing, they're spending more money on telling us that things like housing and community and food and access to good food are important, but they're doing nothing to make sure that we have access to it. So the Health Accord will solve the majority of our issues that we are experiencing in this province, but the side of the part that focuses on the social determinants of health. We're talking about social determinants, but none of the actions in the health transformation have had any impact on that whatsoever. And that's where the focus needs to be.
Robin, I appreciate the time. We've got to squeeze one more in before the news.
Yep.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to Kelly Pafford with the Faith Haven Animal Shelter in Wabush. And good morning, Kelly. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. How about you?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you.
So one of the complicating factors for the evacuees is what to do with their pets. Now, some people can put the dog in the vehicle and away they go, but for others it might be a bit more complicated. How has it complicated your world in Wabush?
Well, for us, and something that we really didn't even think about until it actually happened, was that first, not everybody responds to emergencies the same way. So sometimes people are cool and calm and off they go. Other people do panic, and so when they have animals there, like feral cats, which is quite popular, because that's usually what's surrendered to shelters. It's very hard to catch them the last minute. So when you've only got an hour or two to pack up and leave, then sadly, you have to leave those animals behind.
And so have you seen an influx?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Every day, actually, we're getting, because some people had left enough food, for a few days, and now those few days, of course, are gone. So now, we're stepping in and we're heading over with our volunteers. We have about 20 volunteers that are we take turns, go over, and we're feeding, scooping litter, all the exotic animals like the turtles, bunnies, and all that stuff. Things that were very hard. We had one guy there with 15 fish tanks. So, that's, impossible to take with him, of course.
So when I talk about influx, give us an idea of just how busy you have become, because we know animal shelters across the province have been pretty much overwhelmed recently for a variety of reasons. But if you normally had 10 animals, how many do you have now? Or you give me your own numbers.
In our shelter, we still have the animals that we have in our shelter. We're very lucky in Labrador City. We don't have the cat colonies in that here. Our weather really don't permit it. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we're very lucky about. So what's happening is that these people had left their animals in their homes. So what we're doing is that we're going into their homes with their permission, of course, and all the proper procedures are done with the town and the local police and that. And we're permitted to go into their homes. We are deemed essential. As of yesterday, so we're able to go in and access their property and go in and feed, scoop some litters, take care of bunnies, feed turtles in the aquariums and all that kind of stuff.
No one wants. Sorry, go ahead. You go right ahead. I apologize.
That's grown quite significantly over the last few days.
No doubt it has. And I hate to go down the doom and gloom path, but of course, in preparation for what might happen, because we know Wabush is on an evacuation watch, you're only about 10 minutes away from Lab City itself. So if indeed something changes with the weather and the extent of the fire and you have to evacuate, what kind of plan is in place for your operation?
So each volunteer has a specific place to go. So we have 2 places per volunteer. So they will go in. Kennels are ready to go in their homes for the cats, turtles and everything like that too. We've got no problem picking up these animals as well. Fish, sadly, we'll do what we can. I mean, that would be a pretty tedious rescue, of course, and that would just break our hearts. But like I said, for the most part, we're going to take whatever we can, and we have those plans in place. So that would be right now, we're at about 48 animals, including our own shelter animals as well. Our dogs are already to safety. They are already in Goose Bay, and then we have some that are still here in Wabush, but we have a plan in place for them as well when we have to leave.
We spoke with Bonnie Learning at the SPCA there some while ago, and talking about the fact that they're overwhelmed to the point where they don't have the money to feed and for the veterinary services, what have you. Do you have the resources you need at Faith Haven?
Well, we are running low. One thing I will say, though, about the folks in Labrador City, and I can't speak on behalf of other communities, but for us personally in Labrador City and Walbush, the support is phenomenal. All I have to do is put a shout out that we need food, and it's unbelievable when we go down to the shelter what we see on our front step. If we need money, it's unbelievable when we open up our bank account and we've got that bill paid. We are very, very, very lucky.
Well, if folks in the area are able to help, whether it be with food, and of course a monetary donation goes an awful long way, because you know exactly what you need, and money makes the world go round, whether that's good or bad. I appreciate the time, Kelly.
Right now, too, we're not able to do any fundraising right now. It's just not an appropriate time, of course, to do it. So we are really feeling that. We've got a lot of vet bills coming up to pay. We're probably up to about $22,000 now in vet bills. If anybody ever wants to send any money our way, we will gladly take it, and we would appreciate it more than they can imagine.
And so hopefully that comes to pass. Kelly, I appreciate you making time for the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. That's Kelly Pafford with the Faith Haven Animal Shelter in Wabush. Sticking with Labrador right after the news. Lab City Mayor Belinda Adams is in the queue, and then you. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the Mayor of Labrador City. That's Belinda Adams. Good morning, Mayor Adams. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
Happy to take your call this morning. So right off the bat, what's the latest update in Lab City?
The latest update, it is raining here. I can't be more proud to look at that window today or run into my truck just and stand in that rain. Never felt so good in my life in the rain.
So that's a good thing. So hopefully the rain is intense enough to really help the firefighter suppression efforts. So what are they telling you insofar as where the fire is, how far from town, the condition, still Category 1, obviously, with the rain this morning. So what do we know?
It's a Category 1 fire, and as I tell everybody, it's invaluable, the forestry people who came in and educated us on that. And actually, sometimes I wish there was more of that out there to educate people on, like ourselves, so we understand as well. So it's a Category 1, but if you look at it, and I communicate this all the time to the residents on our morning and nightly updates, is the fire is still extremely hot, the fire is still volatile, and it's out of control. It's a Category 1 because there's no, the winds are down, the rain is coming, so obviously it's not big flames and things like that. Sometimes there is with the wind, but the water bombers and the helicopters did an extremely good job yesterday of dropping a lot on from a suppression system. And what that allows us to do is the ground crew to start getting in there. So there's a lot of work done today to try to get the ground crews in there from that perspective. So there's a lot of work done because the water bombers suppress it. And again, new to me, understanding this, is the ground crews and the weathers of people that are going to put this out. So the water bombers and the helicopters are wonderful, but it's the ground crews and the Mother Nature, good old Mother Nature, that will help us with this. But the favorable conditions today, it didn't take any growth in the last couple of days that way, so it's very good. People need to remember, it's been advertised, we're 600 meters from our landfill. We evacuated 2 cabin areas that were very close, and I mean very close. And if you look from a community perspective, it's on our doorstep. It's extremely close. I don't know what the kilometers are now. Extremely close. So when people see pictures, and that's one message I want to get out to people, when you're doing videos or drone footage, which is not allowed, obviously when you're doing that, you're giving a false sense of security to our community, and we're getting those calls that say we should be moving back and stuff. So even though it may not look like it on some of the pictures, because we can't help people stay here and they're doing that stuff, but we need to respect that safety. So from that perspective, Patty, hats off to the people who, as frustrated as it was to get that call to move people out, we did it in a timely fashion without any injury, any form of safety at all, and people are okay. Happy Valley Goose Bay, South Coast, our friends at Fairmont, Churchill Falls did a phenomenal job helping us with our people, and they still continue to help us with our people, so we appreciate that. And I think, Patty, for me, at 3 o'clock on a Friday, I'm sitting there wondering, how's this going? So, you talk to your firefighters, we're up for a look, and talk to a few people, and it was actually, oh, no, we're good, and we're going to be okay. And 40 minutes later, I get a call for an alert for an evacuation. And that's what people need to understand if we were to bring these people back in our community. So the balance is that we bring them back, and it gets close again. Actually, not even get close, it's there. We bring them back, and the winds change, and we get no rain. We're in trouble again. So people need to understand, and they do. But I know it's trying times, and it's anxious, and people have anxiety over it. So we won't bring people back until we know it's safe to do so. So they're being well taken care of. They're being more patient from that perspective as we educate them and make them understand. But from that list, we do have an essential group here that's taking care of our town, and it's important to recognize that as well. We do need these essential workers because we do need to manage the amount of people. So working with our community across the way, Wabush, on getting groceries for their people. Because, if you look at when we pulled the trigger on evacuating town of Labrador City, it happened so fast, you can't even imagine. It happened so fast. So, our counterparts, Wabush, I'm going to say 7 kilometers away. So they're over there and they got an alert, so they don't get evacuated. But 98% of the essential services in Labrador City. So you're there and you got to evacuate, you take a breath, and then you're like, oh, shoot. Our counterparts are over there sitting there. They have no groceries. They have no gas if they were to evacuate. We got to coordinate with them and work together to get that done and help them out. We can't leave them like that. So then you got to imagine the run we've had in the last 3 or 4 days. We had to make sure our essential workers had gas, like our nurses, our doctors. Essential gas, what does that look like? Can we get everybody from Wabush to get in and get their gas right away in case they had to evacuate? So Wabush did a tremendous job of getting their people on buses, bus them over to limit the amount of people coming into our community in an evacuation. The gas station owners worked around the clock with their workers gone themselves to try to get everybody a bit of gas. Then you have your hospitals up here, so we had to figure that out. We are the ones with the pharmacy. How do we figure that out through 811 and 911? And those people have been through a lot, and it's trying times, it's not a foolproof system. They're still working through it. The vet clinic is here for pet emergencies, working through them, getting the right food for pets and residents. And what else? And just one of our callers on about, pets that were left behind, trying to work with that group who do a phenomenal job of volunteering and get through that. And she's absolutely right. A lot of good people who step up and help with that. And the same thing on the other side, our Fermat, Quebec people are doing extremely well. So yesterday we felt like we had a breather, but then we're like, okay, we got camping owners down there up to 1,000 people, probably from the start of a 15-kilometer mark down to a 70-kilometer mark, that along the way have been excellent in doing that, but they left, so they're running out of food. How do we manage that? So we speak to our Quebec counterparts and started doing escorts to get our service trucks through and let people go to Fermat, Quebec in an orderly fashion, escorted up to go to their grocery store and gas stations to alleviate less people in our community, our city, just keep on the outskirts so they're not wandering. So a lot of work went into that. A lot of the questions this morning is, okay, you got the Quebec fire, that's it, why can't we come to Lab City? It's 23 kilometers away. So again, if you look, when the forestry explained that to us, what people need to understand. So if you look on the Quebec side, where they had the forest fire, it's a different kind of tree, and they call it like a fuel. The trees are fuel for the gas. So those trees are different than our black spruce. And anybody's on the line who understands Labrador, we live with black spruce. But those trees are jammed together, and they're a big fuel source. So those trees are jammed together. We got the white mass, the high probability of more fuel versus up on the Quebec side, it was less probability of fuel to fuel the fire to get more under control. So they made that decision. So that's on them. So people need to understand the fire in Labrador City was a totally different fire if you really think about it from the Quebec side. So the advice is, look, it's amazing the experts they have on this. And guess what? Everything they predicted or called so far has worked. We have to rely on them because, believe me, I'm telling you this little stuff now, and nobody can hold me accountable to it that I've got any kind of education or anything in it. But the experts are the ones we trust, we believe in, and they haven't led us astray. And we'll bring our residents back when we're safe to do so. But for us right now, the biggest thing for us is we need to ensure to get the appropriate support and ensure safety for our community, our essential workers, and maintain our infrastructure. And that's what we're here to do. So we needed to educate our people on that and get there. So I hope that gives a little overview, but I'm open for questions for sure, Patty.
It does, and I'll let you go here pretty quickly. So just to be clear, for the evacuation order to be lifted, the fire has to be extinguished in full? Completely?
Under control.
Is that under control? So just the reference to under control. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So are you calling from Goose Bay this morning?
I'm calling from Labrador City. The Emergency Operations Center is still happening in Labrador City.
Okay.
We have decided to stay here, and obviously we have family who are with us as well. There's 8 or 10 of us from different different roles in the community leader roles. And so we were here pulling all that together and helping our Wabash community over there as well. So we were just helping them. So we are right now in Labrador City, and our experts will let us know when we need to see our tailgates go out of town. They will let us know, and we're very confident in that. So we're just going to stay here and maintain the security of our assets, maintain the security of our, the safety of our essential workers.
I appreciate your time this morning, Mayor Adams. You're always welcome if you need to share some more information with the residents.
No, thank you. Appreciate the time, and thanks for reaching out for the call.
Happy to do it. Take good care.
Take care. Bye.
You too. Mayor Belinda Adams, Lab City. Final break of the morning. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the worries that daycare operators have with the lag between when they're supposed to get their operating grant, between then and when they actually get it, what that means for operations. Renee Francavilla is the owner-operator of Teeter Tots, and Mary's also in the queue to talk about bank tellers. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the owner-operator of Teeter Tots. That's Renee Francavilla. Good morning, Renee. You're on the air.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Did I pronounce your surname properly?
Close. It's Renee Francavilla.
Francavilla. Okay, I went with the old Spanish pronunciation of Francavilla.
That's close enough. It's Italian.
Fair enough. I appreciate you making time for the show. And of course, Francavilla would be Italian. So, we've heard from some different daycare operators about when they submit their form to get their operating grant and just how long it takes to get it. Describe your situation.
Yeah, so we have to submit statistics forms now on a monthly basis. It used to be quarterly basis. Back in April, they went in by day. I'm talking about the government, the operating grant program. They went and redid the entire contract, like standards, policy manual, and basically went and adjusted everything that was in this manual. This includes sick time. This includes vacation time. This includes enrollment statistics. The forms have changed. Everything has changed. And in this one case, they had hosted a town hall meeting and had mentioned that we were going to be doing these new statistics forms monthly to speed up the process of payments. They have heard from us loud and clear that the payment times, it's been taking way too long between the government and into our own pockets. And in my specific case, my statistics forms were submitted June 27th or 26th or 27th. Now, one thing I want to add is that I have immaculate writing. One thing that I take pride in actually is my printing. It's very, very, very clear. I submitted it in. I send my stats form into my home visitor, which is basically somebody who comes in just like a social worker. She does unannounced visits to make sure that everything is up to standard, policies are being held, all that fun stuff. I send my form off to her. She sends the form then off to OGP. Then OGP will trigger a payment, and we should be getting paid. However, every quarter, there's always a delay in something. This is the first time that I myself have had an actual situation where there's something wrong with they say that something was wrong with the statistics form. In my specific case, they had emailed me, I want to say it was a week and a half in. So I sent an email out after a week and a half of waiting for payment. So I want to say it was the 10th or the 11th of July, asking, hey, what's on the go? This isn't this isn't feasible to be waiting such a long time. Normally by now I'll get an invoice letting me know, hey, you're going to be getting paid in a certain amount of days, which is perfect. At least I know when to expect my payment. Nothing had come in my email. I didn't receive any word back knowing if there was anything wrong. And I sent this one email back basically trying to put my foot down, we shouldn't have to wait this long. And are you there?
I'm just listening.
Oh, okay, sorry. It looked like it had cut. It sounded like it cut out. In this one case, I had sent this email out, told them hey, I put my foot down. We shouldn't have to wait this long. This is not acceptable. We have families to feed. We have children to feed. Forget anything else aside. I need to be providing nutritious meals. And as we all know, things are very expensive nowadays. And that same day, they sent an email back to my home visitor. This is 9 o'clock at night. I get an email back saying, Renee, you need to resubmit your forms. They were saying that it's not legible. Now, had my forms had not been legible, my home visitor would have caught it right away and said to me, hey, Renee, I can't read this. If I can't read this, OGP is not going to be able to read this. So I said to her, okay, sure, no problem. She said, I'm so sorry about this being so last minute. I need you to rewrite the form. So I was like, okay, not an issue. I go through, I write the form, send it back. I'm talking within like 10 minutes of me getting this email. I had it sent back right away. Nothing. I hear nothing. Then some more time goes on, and I receive another response from the OGP team, basically asking me about more information about my enrollment statistics, which didn't make sense. They were asking about a child that I had in my care. Basically, on the statistics form, there's a bunch of information that you have to provide. You have to provide the name of the child, the birth of the child, the birthday, I should say, their start date, if they're full-time or part-time, how many days they were enrolled. All of that information is on this sheet. It's a fact sheet, essentially. And like I had said, there is a start date for this child. And they were asking me about months prior if this child was enrolled. And I'm thinking to myself, you're asking me about information that's already on the sheet. It tells you on the sheet that this child started in, let's just say, for example, June. Why are you asking me this? Why are you asking me these questions when they're right in front of your face on the sheet? And it really bothered me because I'm thinking to myself, if you're taking, time to really sit down and try to figure some of this stuff out, this is something that shouldn't be delaying my process even more, which was. So now there's 2 delays that they had put into my process. It took 20 days from my statistics form being originally sent in to receive payment. Thank God I had savings put aside for me to dip in, because if not, I truthfully would have been one of the other providers that would have had to shut their doors because I would have had nothing to feed the children along with my family.
Yeah, because, it's hard enough to stretch the operating grant over the course of 3 months, let alone a delay in payment, because not only feeding the children something nutritious, but feeding your own family, making your car payment, making your mortgage payment, because this is your business.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's a lot to this.
And something to also add in, I'm very proud about it. I run an inclusive-based daycare. I have children that have special needs in my daycare, and with that comes extra meals. I'm not making 1 meal a day. Sometimes I'm having to make 3 extra meals a day to meet the needs of these children. Some of them have food aversion, some of them have sensory issues, and that adds on to the plate of having to have I personally have higher food costs to meet these needs, so it's definitely very, very difficult.
No doubt it is. I don't know what the situation, how we would improve it, but for folks who are at the OGP team, the Operating Grant Program team, even if it was just much more attentive to not trying to make it more difficult and to hit the timelines as prescribed, because the last thing we need is daycare operators shutting their doors. We've got so many people in this province living in the daycare desert. To further exacerbate the problem by not being able to get the grant money out on time is, I'm not going to say whether or not I think it's incompetence or if it's just standard government bureaucracy, but it's simply not good enough. I'll leave it at that. Renee, would you like to have the final thoughts before we say goodbye?
100%. I do agree with you. And something that needs to be done, and this is just hearing back from people that I know kind of what's going on the OGP team. It seems like this last quarter there were moves that were made. People that used to work in this, I guess the people that the payroll department or whatever it is, there's a team that goes through and processes these payments. It seems as if that one person has now moved to a different department. So it seems like there's lack of training that has gone through on the OGP side to ensure that there is attentiveness, there is accuracy, there is, really just attentiveness and accuracy, and just proper training. I think that the OGP really needs to work with the providers rather than working against the providers. We are the ones that are truly working the position, and I think that working with us to try to find a solve would be the best solution.
Whatever it takes, we need to do everything we can to keep the daycares operating the number we have, because, it's a bit of cart before the horse. We've got the affordability issue tackled somewhat, but accessibility can't be reduced because of these shortfalls in the operating grants. I really appreciate making time for the show, Renee. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Renee Francavilla from Teeter Tots. All right, final thoughts this morning goes to line number 1. Wayne, you're on the air.
Morning, sir. How are you?
Great today. How about you?
Not bad. I was in on the Gander River yesterday fishing in a place called Back Angle, and somebody left a very expensive rod and reel there, so they can get a hold of me at 709-571-0113 and just give me the details of the brand and that, and they can have the rod back.
Good on you for doing it. I mean, how do you leave your rod and reel behind when you're out salmon fishing?
Well, it's not a real good year for salmon fishing, so maybe they got bored. Maybe they left it there in frustration. Who knows? Anyway, thanks a lot, Dave. This is the first time I've ever been on Open Line.
I appreciate making time for the show, and thanks for your honesty. Hopefully someone who left behind your expensive rod and reel will give Wayne a shout at 709-571-0113. Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you. Have a good day, sir.
You too, sir. Bye-bye. All right, there you go. Wayne did indeed have the last word. But we will pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.